Okay. Hello, all. Thank you all for joining us. Welcome back to season 4 of Are You Mine? Now, I want to, yay! Hi! So sorry about that delay.
Hi, my name is Michael Rowe. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the city of Chicago.
All right.
And I, do a lot of practice with African Americans as well as everybody, but I kind of specifically target African Americans because, in our community, therapy is still kind of taboo. So I follow that principle of like normalized therapy. I didn't come up with that term. There's a movement in Chicago called normalized therapy. And I kind of, like that because I think therapy should be normalized in our community.
I agree. Totally agree. Okay, so you said you, Michael Rowe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Rowe. All right. Can I call you, do you have a nickname for short? Do you go by Mike?
Yeah, Mike's fine.
Okay. All right, just for the sake of conversation. Okay, Mike, so you said you have a thing in Chicago. You're originally from Chicago, Illinois. Whoop, whoop. Like I told you in our meeting, that's one of the cities that is on my to-do list to visit. And I'm fascinated by I'm just fascinated by the city, the culture, and everything that it embodies. And so I love the fact that you mentioned normalized therapy. Now you said that that's a thing right now in Chicago.
There's this gentleman by the name of Christopher Lamarck. He has what's called Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health. And under that banner is called Normalized Therapy, where he brings African-American therapists from all over the city to provide, low cost or free therapy services to people who need it.
Cool. Awesome. So there's already, so there's a thing right now going on in Chicago, normalized therapy, Christopher Mark. Okay, you said coffee and hip hop is what I caught. Coffee, hip hop, and therapy. That's exactly it. That's exactly the whole premise of this podcast, or this platform as well, is to let those who are suffering silently know that it is okay to say, like, I'm not okay. I think that in the culture, in the community, specifically being a first generation immigrant as well, there's always, it's like this, we were built to persevere just in general, just as a people. Like, whether you're first generation or not, when I feel like if there's African descent in your blood, there's just this strong determination to just, prevail by any means necessary. And I think that what comes with that is also we tend to get into the mask of when there is actually something wrong to not really discuss it, and especially when it comes to mental health, because it's like, oh, I'm not crazy. And I understand, I have an idea as to why, if you think about the history of mental health, right, and how a lot of folks, once they were stigmatized as having some form of mental health ailment, then that's when that R word was a thing, like, like, oh, you must be, that for those who don't know what the R word is, it used to, that slang, or it's no longer prohibited to use. They would say, oh, you're retarded, or or you're slow. But I think it's a little bit more than the physical ailments that come with it. I think it's a matter of us just, like, it's no different from someone who's dyslexic, right? You find out that you're dyslexic in school, and you find a way to overcome that. And I think that that's where that's the whole premise of the podcast, in a sense, is just like for us to identify the areas in which we can strengthen, as opposed to labeling it as a weakness. But I'm saying all that to say, in regards to normalizing, like, that normalized therapy was awesome. I'll definitely check that out. But also just to have that open dialogue about, how the African American community specifically, or just Africans, or just anyone of African descent of the diaspora, just always runs away from mental health. And they have some reason too, in terms of medicine, right, in the westernized world.
Well, yeah, I kind of understand the reluctance for some historically to get therapy because anytime we did in the past, we would be over stigmatized and stuff like that. So I can understand that to some extent, but that's why we have to fight to change it. I mean, if you look at the diaspora community, you always taking on other qualities of the dominant society. Why not take on stuff that benefits you instead of taking on the most destructive qualities? That's my point.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I understand people say, oh, I'm going to go to church. All you need is prayer. I mean, okay, prayer stuff is fine. I'm not knocking the church, but when you have a headache, you don't say, go pray on it. You go take some aspirin, right?
Yes,
so what's
sir.
the difference if you suffering from something, go and talk to a therapist? And this is why, as people of African descent, we need to get in these fields because there is prejudice in it. Sometimes you may go to a non-Black therapist and he may not take your background and all that in your culture into context.
Yes.
That's why we should be in this field ourselves. So we have the training and we bring our backgrounds to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. That's right. Exactly it. And that's why you're here. That's why I want to show the world that what a Black therapist look like. A Black therapist is no different from you and me. Black therapist is someone that also had to go through the struggles, had to also climb upward. And I know that there was probably some turmoil and or some some upward stream, how do you call it, obstacles for yourself to even probably obtain licensing. And from what I'm understanding, because I kind of follow a lot of the Black therapists now and from around the world, and there's so much bias even amongst the Black therapists or them obtaining licensing even within behind the scenes. So which is why I'm like, a Black therapist. Oh my God. Hey, can I, can you be down? Can I be, I'm like, can we show more of you? Can we see more of you? Because it's not easy. And I can also, from my experience, looking for a Black therapist or seeking a Black therapist when I was in the process of grieving for my mom. And the only reason why I knew that I needed to go because I felt that loss. I felt spiritually that there was a loss, within the physical realm, but in the spiritual realm, there was something that was going on as well. And I knew that with God, I also needed therapy because I just knew that there was a lot of healing that needed to take place in regards to growing up as a first generation African, and especially me being the first girl, all of the pressures that come with being the first girl. You're almost like the second wife or the first, the second mother. So I knew that there was a lot of areas because, we're growing up in the new world. So I knew that there was a lot of areas that I needed to get sorted out with myself. So when I met with this psychologist, she understood okay, yeah, you're exhausted. You definitely need some time off. But what I didn't like was when she suggested Valium. So when she suggested Valium to me, watching all of my parents pass away and how they passed away and the medications that they were just pumping them with, I've always kind of been reluctant towards all of the westernized medicine. So when she suggested Valium, and I kind of understand a little bit of psychotropic meds, I felt reluctant at that moment. That's when I realized, okay, that's when I took a step back. Okay, is she really here for my well-being? Because we kind of know the history of Valium, and I'm just well, you know what? I'm gonna take your suggestion in regards that I probably need something to calm the panic attacks, all right, or the to calm myself. But what I actually did was I took the alternative method, and I went to in the state of Pennsylvania, medical marijuana is a thing, and if you fell underneath any of the categories, and I fell underneath, she had diagnosed me with anxiety, extreme anxiety, and stress disorder, which is perfectly understandable given the amount of weight that I've been carrying for so many years. I was just like, okay, yeah, right, sure. Who doesn't have anxiety right now or in today's time? So no problem. So then I sought a second opinion, and then I joined the medical marijuana program for the state of Pennsylvania, and it did serve as an aid. So I wanted to know what your take is on medical marijuana in regards to it in combination with treatment.
From my understanding, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's like any other type of medicine that it can be very useful or it can be not so useful. I mean, I've known people who used it and it worked wonders, whereas I know other people who used it where they were kind of like, I don't know, I got paranoid, and so it's like I tell people, if you think it will work, try it. Don't use it as a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because like I said, sometimes people, if you can't even be relaxed at all, therapy can't even work for you. So sometimes you may need something like that to settle you, because like I said, it is a natural herb. But like I said, anything else, you just have to be moderation. You can't just be like, oh
Yes.
well, I'm suffering. Let me go smoke me a blunt 2 or 3 times a day. That's abusing it. It's like
That
if
is
you
a
someone
reason.
to give you,
Yes.
right. It's just like if someone was to give you volume and you like, oh man, I need 3 or 4 of these. That's abuse. You know
That's
what I mean?
abuse. Yes,
So,
sir.
but I don't. From the research that I've done, I think medical marijuana can be very helpful to people. And I wouldn't be against anyone trying it. You know what I mean? Especially
Yeah.
if it's legal in the state you reside in. I'm all for it.
Is it legal in Chicago? I mean, well, Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois. Yeah,
Is
it's
it
legal here.
just
No,
is it
it's
just
recreational and medical.
recreational
You
and
can,
medical also? Okay, yes,
mhm,
here it's
mhm,
just medical.
okay.
And yeah, my personal experience with it is that it actually did serve wonders for me,
Mhm,
in regards to allow me to relax, because I think
mhm,
I've just always been on the go for like
right.
all of my life. That is like, you gotta do this, you gotta do da, 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 da. So at times, I would just like, as needed, would just, maybe like maybe in the morning, maybe have like a sativa, and a sativa is more like a medical, it's more like it's supposed to do more with like focusing,
Mhm,
so that I would just be able to, like be in my creative zone. And maybe at night, an indica that would just like maybe like really just settle me down. But I would go more for like the hybrids, because the hybrids had like a little
mhm,
50-50 of each. Um, but I did that for about literally 2 years. 2 years. And I started off with the traditional flower, because that's what I knew, because in college you kind of like get introduced to herbs. So I'm like, all right, and then I know it comes in all kind of forms, but let me just stick with the flower. So I noticed that I started with the flower, and then that worked out, and then I was able to like, okay, find my balance. But it wasn't just medical marijuana, it was medical marijuana. It was also working out and doing, still practicing
mhm.
yoga. It was still meditating in between. It was like it just added on to my regimen, to my
Right,
regimen.
it's like a holistic approach. You have to, that's why I tell people you have to, the body and mind works in conjunction with other. So if you're getting therapy, you still should have like a regular exercise routine, even if it's nothing, just walking. You got to get those endorphins going. You have to eat properly. So it's a combination.
Okay, yes, exactly. And that, yeah, that's exactly it. That was exactly it for me. It was a combination. And then I feel like I was able to get a lot more clarity in my day to day. And even in the podcast, there'll be some episodes I was kind of like testing out different strands, like, like, okay,
Mhm,
like this is kind of like the sativa that I'm doing right now. And and I'll just be kind of like talking about it a little bit. But yeah, I wanted to touch on that, like, medical marijuana, is it a thing
mhm.
that we're kind of like, but everything is always in moderation, but
Exactly.
recently, as I continue to like, feel like I'm like, grounded, and I felt like I had a little bit more control over my body in regards to like learning how to like calm myself down naturally. I then like slowly went from the flower to then the tinctures, which was just like oil drops that you can probably just like, maybe
Okay.
coffee or just place underneath your tongue, to whereas I was like, you know what, I don't need anything at all. Like, let me try
Mhm,
it. Like, like I slowly kind of like weaned myself off. Because I noticed that with I guess you can say like the high with the flowers,
mhm,
it's a little bit more like cloudier. At the time, it was what I needed. But then when I switched over to the tinctures, I realized, okay, this is a little bit more like I'm still able to function, but it's a little bit more clear. Like, it's not
mhm.
as foggy, literally and figuratively, as the smoking. And then it was kind of just like, all right, well, I think I can go without. Like, let me try how can I do like one day without, 2 days without,
Mhm.
1 month, 2 months. Okay. 3 months. All right, you know what? I don't even need to renew this card. Like, like thanks.
Exactly.
Like, so um I am very appreciative of I'm appreciative of you speaking on that, because it was kind of like a taboo, you know. Oh, especially as a like
Yeah.
girl, smoking is like, hey, do you want
Right,
to get
right.
married? Do you want a husband? Well, you can't be smoking. I'm just like, I kind of.
Mhm.
So thank you. Any other tips that you would like to add on in regards to like the medical marijuana segment, or like the marijuana period, like with the Black community, or you know?
Yeah, like I said, it's just I encourage people to say, check it out. You know, if you really think you need it, like I said, I just remind people with any type of thing you're taking in, just remember, more time than not, it's something that's supposed to be temporary and not permanent. Like you said, you used it for a while, and then
Mhm.
you start, needing it less. Now, there may be some cases where people may need stuff long term, but my tip is always to realize you use those as a crutch. That's not the end all and be all. They did. I say, so just balance basically. Guess that's my overall thing with things like that. Just balance.
Nice.
If you're going to use marijuana, like I said, your whole thing shouldn't be, oh man, I can't wait to get home to my weed, and you see what I mean. I'm gonna skip therapy. I'm gonna skip therapy this week. I'm just gonna smoke an extra blunt. Nah, that's
Right.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We can't be doing that. Right.
yeah,
Right. You
right,
need to
right.
we need therapy with the blunts. Like, yes,
Exactly.
therapy and blood. Yeah, we need the combination,
Mhm.
and go and working out too, and go and pray and do whatever you do. Awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. And like, so can I ask just like a general, like, what was it like growing up in Chicago? I'm just asking just because, it's just,
I
did
mean,
you hear so much?
Chicago. I mean, it's probably like growing up in any other major city. You have your good parts. You have your crime, the gang influence. So it was. I like growing up in Chicago. It's definitely a good experience. There's things I wish were different about growing up in the city. Especially my generation. I grew up in the late '80s. Well, I was born in '73, so I grew up in the '80s into the '90s. Graduated high school in '92.
Okay.
So things were rough then, but wasn't nearly to the extent it was now. I grew up in the golden age of hip hop. And Chicago hadn't really had a major hip hop scene like it
Yeah.
does now. But it was cool. House music was around, and that was our stuff. So Chicago was definitely a unique place. A lot of places like New York get all the glory, but Chicago, it's that city.
Yeah. What is, yeah, exactly. It is that city. It truly is that city that is just one of those, it's just one of those cities that you just want to visit. I just feel like it is rich in a lot of the Black culture too.
Oh, it was. People are talking about the Harlem Renaissance, but most of those people from the Harlem Renaissance were just people from Chicago who moved out to New York. You know what I mean? So,
Oh, okay.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Look at that. All right. So, okay, so yeah, okay. So most of the people from, look at that. I love it. I love the history. I love learning as much about African American history as much as possible from the people directly, as opposed to reading it. I mean, don't get me
Hmm.
wrong, there's nothing wrong with reading reading about the
Right.
history, but it's always good to like be
Hmm.
able to
Hmm.
discuss it with a fellow African American. And that's like what I've been doing all of my life, trying to get like the ins and outs of what is it to be like a real African, not a real, yeah, like a real African American, like in terms
Right,
of like
right,
that,
right.
you get what I'm saying, right? Like
Mhm.
that history that comes behind it, and how did we get lost from it? How is it that some
Mhm.
African Americans still resonate with being African, right? And why is it that some others have distanced themselves or feel like they should be far removed from
Well, yeah,
anything?
that's just one of the bad things. I don't know, one of the colonial legacies, because it's like African Americans, like I hear a lot of people, I ain't African, I'm born in America, I'm
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi. Some Africans, we're different from those African Americans. And I'm like, listen, we all face the same oppression, the same type of things. Whether you be in Chicago, whether you go to Haiti, Jamaica, even the continent of Africa, you see a lot of the same exploitative dynamics. So I'm like, why are we all fighting each other when we in the same boat together? It's ridiculous.
Yes.
Because when I had a chance to go to Africa, and I was in Senegal, and when I was
Mm-hmm.
leaving, which is one experience I had. A guy was looking at my passport. He kept looking at my passport, looking up at me, and I'm like, "Is there something wrong?" He said, "This is American passport." I said, "Yeah, I'm from Chicago." He said, he looked at me, but you look Senegalese. You know what I mean? Where'd you get this passport from? You know,
Oh,
exactly. So he thought I was from Senegal. And same thing when I went to Jamaica. People like, oh yeah, so you home to visit? Like, no, I'm here for vacation. You not from Jamaica? No. What about your parents? No, but they thought I was Jamaican. So you know, it's like this perceived difference we have each other. We're way more alike than we are different. You know.
hello.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. We are way more alike than we are different. And growing up as a first generation African, like Ghanaian, as I told you, like I would be in the schools. No one knew that I was Ghanaian unless I say I'm Ghanaian. In the midst of it, I'm just
Mhm.
down like a little like an African American girl, just like anybody else.
Mhm.
And I would even listen to some of my peers, they'd be like mocking the fact, okay, African booty scratchers and all of the other nonsense. And I just be quietly sitting there. I thank God that I wasn't ridiculed, because when I even came to the school, when I came back to schools, I had the low school girl haircuts, like the Ghana
Mhm.
girls, how they just
Oh
have like
yeah.
the
Uh-huh.
I came in like that. And God bless my friend. She has a line, it's called K the Court. And I don't know, she just kind of like she just kind of like took me on as a friend. And I gravitated to her so much because it's like, thank you. Like she could have laughed at me. I've seen other kids get laughed at that come in straight from back home. They get
Mhm.
laughed at, they get mocked, or, for looking different or having their hair different or not, not
Mhm.
going with the, I guess, the westernized or the European version of what, our hair beauty should look like. And
Mhm.
I've always just gravitated towards the African Americans specifically that would gravitate towards me or that would embrace me. I will always try to resonate with those who didn't really understand our connection. I would just let them know, like, listen, as long as you look like me, nobody really
Mhm.
cares about what else you're mixed with. Unfortunately, I hate to say it that way,
Right.
but it's just one of those things that we need to heal from. That's a lot of that.
Mhm.
That's why I always say, like, if you are of African descent, you need therapy. I feel like therapy should be just as common as your annual physical. Like, I think that you
Yeah,
should
it really
spend the
should.
time, I think at least there should be some point of time, especially when you're uncertain of yourself, or when you just feel like, there's like maybe this learned helplessness where you feel like you can't get ahead. I feel like that's the time that you probably want to reach with a Black therapist that can maybe relate to you and let you know, like, hey, it's not just you, it's almost all of us. And these are different ways that we can overcome it, or this is different ways that you can look at it. But the listen, the Black, brown, and indigenous people, they have a lot of healing to do just in general. Therapy should even be free for us, but that's another story.
Right,
But
right.
that's another story, just to heal alone. But I thank you again just so much for just taking the time just to vibe with me, just to connect with me. I know you always connect with me on
Mhm.
IG, but I really genuinely do appreciate you just like, also being a face, to what it is, to a
And
Black.
I appreciate you as well for putting this forum together. I mean, this is so needed. It's so rare actually. So just for you just going through the effort and do this, I know it's kind of like being on a scavenger hunt trying to find an African American therapist, especially male ones. So I know
Oh,
it's a lot of
yes.
time, blood, sweat, and tears put into this. So I appreciate you having this forum.
No problem. No problem at all. And you know what? That's a good point you mentioned in terms of male. Because I noticed when you look at Black therapists, it's just like a lot of Black women, Black female, and you may see
Hmm.
one or two Black males. That is a
Yeah.
very important point you just made
Hmm.
there. Which I'm like, listen, if you're Black and you're a therapist and you practicing, hit me up. Like, but yes, that is a really good point right there, because there are some young women that need to meet with a Black male, because they may even not even have that father figure in their life, and they may just need
Right.
that perspective from the male, as opposed to, yeah,
Mhm.
because we can go in, that's another dialogue in terms of the
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of the homes. But again, thank you so much for your time. And
Oh, you're
again,
very
Mr.
welcome.
Mike
Anytime.
Rowe. No, sorry again.
I say anytime. Anytime.
Thank you,
Mhm.
thank you. And we're gonna and I remember you mentioned us getting a gathering a group so we can do Ghana. I already know. So we're gonna
Yes,
put that out
definitely.
there.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh yeah.
but they gotta be on there. They gotta be either healing, on the process of healing, because we can't have any colonized mindsets coming in, and,
Exactly,
and
right?
they're like, what is all these mosquitoes? Oh my God. But anyway, thank you so much again, Mr. Rowe. This will be aired audio on all of the podcasts, all of my podcast
Okay.
platforms. I haven't had like a clubhouse thing going on. No one really entered, but it's okay. I'm like, nobody really entered. It's okay. It's my first one, but we could definitely have you back on too again if you'd like to
Oh,
discuss
sure.
more topics, at least if you're up to it.
Oh, definitely
And
anytime.
this will be on YouTube as well. So
Okay,
you're
great.
gonna be around here. And guys, if you wanna make a appointment with Mr. Rowe, Mr. Mike Rowe, you can see he's a Black therapist located in Chicago, Illinois, treating all of Chicago. We're still trying to find out if he can treat outside of Chicago. But if you're definitely in Chicago, hit us up, or how do you call it? Answer the pre-screening questions that I have on areyumad.com, arghumad.com.